Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, both classic and new comics we want to read, and everything else in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Planes, Trains, and Comic Books. We got John here. We're doing audio recorded again over the internet. So say hi, John.
Hey all. Yeah, I'm here.
Yes. So today. What?
I was gonna say we should just annoy our fans in the future, and I'll just say it like we normally do, and then we'll have that delay and be like, "What is
the horrible
going on
delay?
with them?" The horrible
John
delay.
is completely off. So
It's John's fault.
It's always John. Just always blame it on John. That's what I've learned. So, so today to celebrate the new year, of course, Happy New Year's, everybody. We thought it might be cool to go back to the origin of superheroes and comics, not comics, but like popular, big, modern comics. And we decided to read the Golden Age of Superman, the original Superman comics that appeared in Action Comics in 1938. Good God, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And we checked out a trade. You can find these pretty easily now. They've reprinted there's like 6 volumes of old Action Comics that they've reprinted. And they call it Superman, the Golden Age, so you'd know. But if you didn't know, Action Comics was the original title Superman started out in. And he was just one of many in that comic. So it was kind of like a anthology where you'd have different action stories, and Superman was one of them. And his character was so popular that they eventually just made everything Superman in it. So Action Comics is still ongoing now. I don't know if you knew this, John, but
I did not it hasn't stopped. It hasn't.
Yeah, it has never stopped.
That's awesome.
As of this week, I picked up Action Comics 1050. So that's what they're on now.
That's really cool that they have they have not, and they've never done okay, we're gonna completely restart over. And
no, they did that, but they eventually went back to the numbering. Like they know which number they're on, and like they just call those ones. They have it's number 1, but it's Legacy issue 800 or whatever, right? So when they decided that didn't go well, they just went back to the old numbering, and it was like, whatever, you just keep collecting it if you've been collecting it. But for the most part, I mean, it is still the same number it is or was from the old numbering. So, but through the 90s, I think they did that in 2012 when they went back to number 1. Okay. So from 1938 to 2012, it was the same numbering the entire time. And then, they went to number 1, but like I said, they just went back. They reverted to the old numbering, and now we're at the correct, including the ones that they renumbered, we're at the correct number with those ones included. So,
and who owns Action Comics? Is it DC or?
Yeah, Superman.
I'm sorry. I guess I guess what I meant to say is I should have looked this up beforehand. Is when did they acquire and pull in?
No. So Action Comics is printed by National Comics in 1938.
Okay.
Which eventually became DC. It wasn't bought by DC. They just changed their name to DC.
Okay. See, I did not know that at all.
Yes.
So, some comic book fan I am.
Yeah, and then at the same token, you had Action Comics, right? You also had Detective Comics, which ended up becoming a main Batman title. So it kind of sucks for these titles because they usually are really fun and good. A lot of the good Superman stories and Batman stories happen in Detective Comics and Action Comics, but they don't have the name recognition, right? Because they're not called Superman and Batman. So a lot of people, in the 90s and 80s when they were sold at newspaper stands or newsstand, whatever the fuck they call them, newsstands. People wouldn't order these because they're like, well, I don't know what Action Comics is, but I know what Superman is. So let's order Superman and let's order Batman, but I don't know what Detective Comics is. So it does have an issue with its naming just because it's like a staple, but also the name isn't the best. It's kind of like our name, John. When I was like, hey, let's name ourselves Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, and then I was like, that's fun. And then 3 years later, I'm like, maybe that wasn't the best name for comic book recognition, but we're sticking with it. All right. So, even when Otaku Mike interviewed us on Otakuology,
that's right.
They're like, so how come you don't talk about planes and trains? I'm like, Good point. Good point. But yeah, so
Someday we'll surprise everybody, and we will look for a comic on just planes and just trains.
yeah, I don't know if they make
and
those, but
hey, we'll figure it out. We will see. Maybe there's like a Thomas the Tank Engine, and that'll take care of
I
our
don't want to
trains
read that.
comic. It's like a no. I'm saying like like they have like someone took that story and then made it like an adult
like
comic.
Frank Miller's Thomas the
Yeah,
Train.
exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we went back and we read the original Superman from Action Comics 1. I read through issue 10. John, how much of this did you read?
I read to issue 8.
Okay, that's good. So like the mandate for us to read this was read as far as you can, because these are old. They have their own style. And the cool thing about this, and it kind of, I wanted to go through these not like one at a time like we do with our normal comic books that we, the trades that we go through, because they're all one-off stories. Each one of these issues is a separate story. There's not like a continuing arcing story, because that's a new phenomenon from, let's say, 1986 forward. And so before that, you would just get a lot of one part stories. It's all contained in one issue. Because you got to think, like, this is for kids walking by the grocery store or the newsstand and seeing, I want to read Superman this week, and they can pick it up and they can read it, and they don't need to know a bunch of history and all that. So you just get everything in one shot. So it was made for that. Whereas now, you get a 6-part story is pretty much the only stories like size you get. And if you pick up issue 3 of that 6-issue story, you're probably going to be pretty lost. So, and hopefully issues 1 and 2 of that story did not sell out. So it's just one of those things that's changed over the years. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, is like the change of like 1, superhero comics compared to like then and now. And then 2, even like this is the first superhero. Did you know that, John?
This is like the first
superhero.
I think I probably heard that before, but it's not like until you say it on the podcast, I don't know if it's true.
It is. I said Matt has said it. Matt has spoken. It is true. So, like, this Superman was the first person with superpowers that was ever in a comic book, like unearthly powers. Now, that depends what your I guess lingo, or like what you define superpowers as, because there was like the Shadow and the Phantom, and they had some kind of supernatural, like mystical powers, but it wasn't like this. It wasn't like super strength, super speed, invulnerable to bullets, all that kind of stuff. This is all brand new, never thought of before. These 2 Jewish kids named Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, developed this all on their own. And, it changed the whole comics medium forever, kind of thing. So you can thank them for that. And I don't know,
Superman's Jewish?
I mean, if you go to a bunch of, like, I went to the Skirball Museum in Los Angeles when they were doing a comic book, like I think it was called Jewish People in Comic Books exhibit. And I mean, there's so many of them. I mean, Stan Lee is Jewish, right? Yeah. Stan Leibowitz, and a lot of people are Jewish that wrote comics and created comics, and so especially the early stuff. And so Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster, they kind of made this like a Moses story. I don't know if the idea that, so we're sending our kid away.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Be found,
I don't think I ever put that together.
Yeah, that's kind of like, it's a Moses. This is what they said at the museum, that it's kind of like a Moses take. It's a take on Moses from the Bible. So, or the Torah, I guess is what they're going from. But yeah, so like that makes sense. Also, like, I love that like the development of his powers is happening in real time as you're reading this. So in the first issue, we get introduced to Superman. It's the first issue, and one thing I like is they don't spend any time on his origin. They're just like this is what happened. It's one page. It's actually half of a page.
Yeah.
Of his planet was blowing up. Yeah, our planet is dying. We're sending our son. He's a baby. He lands. People find him. He's lifting furniture, and then now he's Superman. It's like, holy shit. So at the beginning, in the first issue, all he can do is leap 1/8 of a mile or hurdle a 20-story building. I guess that's what 1/8 of a mile is. He can raise tremendous weights, and he can run faster than an express train. And then also his skin nothing can penetrate his skin less than a bursting shell, which I guess is like a World War II, shell or whatever from like a cannon. So That's what his powers were in this first issues. One thing I also like, because they had to explain, because like I said, this is the first superhero. They're like, don't worry, kids, this isn't crazy talk. Look, there are beings on our Earth right now that have super strength and super jumping ability. Like an ant can pick up 50 times its own weight, and crickets can jump super far for, comparative to their size. So it's just like that. So like there's a little like science thing on the bottom to try to get kids to buy this idea of Superman. Like it's so unbelievable and so far-fetched and so unlike anything that had ever been, that they had to explain it using like science to try to get kids to believe it. Which I don't know. What'd you think of that? Did you just think they were like, oh, this is some like weird thing?
No, I got that right away. I was like, oh yeah, they're trying to be like, oh, this is like, it's like he's like an ant because ants can live, yeah, like I said, 50 times their, but no, and I didn't realize that he could not fly. And like I knew the like able to leap tall, like faster than a locomotive, more power.
Yeah,
yeah, I knew all of that, or faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than locomotive. At least that's like the old cartoon. And then even this is like that a tiny bit, but I didn't know he could not fly initially. And that's one thing, like
for a while.
Yeah. And even reading this, like, so I read this page and like I think I read it twice just to be like, oh wow, okay, this is his power. Oh, like an eighth of a mile. That's really specific. Okay, interesting.
yeah, I thought that too.
But even still, like as we got into like the second and third issue, I'm like, man, he's like walking and jumping a lot. Like, when does he fly? It still didn't like fully click. I was like,
he just walks and jumps everywhere. What the hell? Also, like the design of his costume like is not set in stone at the beginning. Like,
oh yeah,
it's like I mean I think it's blue and red. Like sometimes the S is non-readable on his chest, so you're just kind of like, okay, like I guess they didn't have it quite down or something. I don't know exactly, but yeah, it's very interesting. And then also one thing that's different than nowadays, I guess you'd say, is on the first page of Action Comics, with the Superman section, it says Superman, champion of the oppressed. So like he's basically here to help those who need help. And so I thought that was interesting. There's a lot of social issues that, especially like going from the 30s, we're like, okay, I guess like work conditions and living conditions were a thing back then. Also sports for some reason were like a really big thing. Like football is in this, but it's like early football, like Leatherhead football. And it's just like, what? There's an issue about football in this. So
yeah, the things that Superman tackled in the issues that we read, it definitely was like, oh, he's kind of like just like he's like I'm pardon me for calling this word. This is the only thing I can think of. He's kind of like a social justice warrior who actually has like a little bit of extra strength and power to like back him up and like be able to get some things done.
Sure. So like I would say like, especially for like the 30s, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
comparing it to nowadays, but yeah, in the 30s, he was progressive in the 30s. That's what it was. And as surprisingly, and I was surprised about this. I don't know about you, John, but I thought there'd be a lot more like racism in this comic. Like specifically if they I just figured if we read like Hookjaw or things like that, which are from the 70s, or even some things that are around, I don't know if we've ever read something this old, but just I've read stuff that's old and you're like, ooh, that doesn't look good. Like, The Spirit or something like that, where he's got his sidekick Ebony, and it's like a black kid that looks really, really terrible for nowadays. So
no, I 100% was watching for that too, because like you said, whether it's like not necessarily purposely racist, but especially for the time, like if they have any person of another ethnicity than a white person or European descent person, like they usually have like more exaggerated features and like their speech is different.
Yeah,
and those characters weren't. It was more no representation of that than like
yeah, they shouldn't have black people in this.
Yeah, I mean that sounds horrible, but like, yeah, I'm thinking.
I don't know if that's better or worse. I don't know if it's worse to like not have representation, or if you're represented, but you're represented in the worst way possible. So,
yeah, I think in one of the parties, there's I think there is someone of color, at least the
okay.
the colors.
I don't think I saw that.
the colors used on them made it that seem like they were a darker skin tone than some of the other people there. So I'm assuming, but
Okay.
they no lines. And then the only other one I can think of, I think there was a Native American on one of the covers, and that
Yes,
was very
the cover had a Native American person, and it was very stereotypical Native American. So
yeah,
but you got to remember, these are like selling to kids in the 30s. So that's,
exactly.
and also
These are
there was also a jungle cover for Action because, like I said, this is not just a Superman title. Superman was one of the many stories inside of the comic called Action Comics. So there was like a jungle one where there was like an African, tribesman or something in the background.
I think I think that one was just I think there was an ape, but I think the guy looked white at least on the cover. No?
I'm almost 100% sure that was a native tribes person that they.
Oh wow.
So
Okay. Well,
that's what I'm saying. Like they did not depict.
they didn't do
Black
that very
people
well then. Yeah.
well. Yeah. So that was the cover though. The inside of Superman stuff didn't have any of that. They did have racism though, but it was mostly against it was like against Slavs and or people from Eastern European descent. They also had a specific dialect. I don't know if you noticed. they could not they didn't speak English very well. Let's put it that way. And they wrote them like that. So it was like, oh, like there's racism in this, but it's against Polish people or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it's against Czechs.
Those Polacks and Czechs.
Yes. So it was. I don't know if you should say that word, John. I don't know.
Okay, I apologize if that's. I am have Czech descent in me.
You've watched too much All in the Family. That's what.
Yeah.
Well, they said the word, and I apologize if this is super offensive. I don't think it is because I didn't even know what it was. I like read it and I was like, I think that is a racial term for a Slavic person, but it was bohunk, which I had to look up. And bohunk is someone of Southern Eastern European descent, so it's even specific to Southern Eastern European. So
yeah, that has to be that.
Like Hungarian, Romanian, maybe. I don't know. That's what they're going for, but I thought that was interesting.
Is that well?
So,
I just wanted to say one quick thing, just that it's interesting because like we're really as a culture nowadays, especially. I mean, as the years have gone by, but even more now. Obviously we're really sensitive, especially to racial identities and things like that. But there's a couple cultures that we still kind of have those stereotypes, and everybody's just kind of like, huh, like Italians.
Yeah, Italians,
like,
yeah.
Everybody does the talking with their hands, or you're doing the little upper like Mario voice, basically.
Greek people.
Yeah, Greek.
My big fat Greek wedding.
Yeah, so there's definitely like Eastern European ones that we still kind of like are part of every day, and nobody really says anything about those anymore. So.
I don't know how that like became a thing, but like, I mean, it was obviously they would write them differently, and they were not white. That's they did not think of them as like whites back then. So that's I think it's kind of interesting to see. There was racism in this, but they weren't even having black people in the comic. It was racism against, Slavic people or Eastern European people, which were not white back then. So, yeah. So the first story that we see, like the first little story that we get out of this, is something I thought was very interesting because, like, Superman has decided that there is a woman who is on death's row for murder. He's decided that she's innocent. They don't say how he like figured this out really. They're like, Superman just knows she's innocent. So he breaks her out of prison. Oh, no. He doesn't break her. He gets the girl who is the one who murdered someone as like a husband or whatever. So he gets the woman who murdered the husband in reality, ties her up, put her outside of the governor's mansion or whatever. Then he goes to the governor's mansion and wakes him up in the middle of the night. He even has to like fight the butler. I don't know.
I don't know if it was a guard or a butler, or it made me think guard because for some reason
he's sleeping. He's got a sleeping robe. So I don't know, lover of the governor. I don't know.
Well, this governor also sleeps in like a panic room. With
a metal. It's almost like they heard Superman was coming or something. And like, get in the panic room. He can't break through steel. So Superman literally breaks into this house, gets shot. So we see, okay, yeah, he can take shots from bullets. And then he like the guard is like, haha, you'll never get through that steel door. And then Superman strips through it like it's nothing, of course. And it's all just to get to the mayor or whatever, or the governor who he's like, you got to sign this order so that, we save this girl's life. It's 11:59 or whatever. And she's about to die. And so and also he brings like a signed confession of the woman that he has tied up in the lawn outside. So he's like, just call them and make sure, you get off. So the governor reads this like, yes, I did it. No. And he's like, good enough for me. calls, gets her off of death, of she's like literally in the electric chair.
Yeah, they
And
literally
then
have a clock in the corner of the thing, like that. You're like, oh no, the count, it's counting down.
yes, yes. And then she gets saved, and then the real person, I guess, is now not even tried. They don't even show like trials. They just like, I guess she's on death row now. like, cause she said she was guilty. So there's definitely a bit of like, he is fighting for the oppressed or the innocent, but he's also like, I'm just gonna do what I want. I think she's innocent, and there is no government that can stop me. So like, I mean, you can, you could try to say I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to do it. So
He does break and enter on the first issue.
he breaks the law many times in this, which I thought was funny, to make a point too sometimes, which is like, what? Like,
Yeah.
like, so yeah, it's just like an interesting thing. That like, and the governor at the end is like, thank God he's on the side of law and order, because apparently he's not even human. Like, he tore through metal like it was paper. So I don't know if he's on the side of law and order. He's on the side of whatever his moral compass is.
Yeah.
So I just think that's interesting, because you could say that he is like I said, on the side of good or whatever, but he's also a bit of, there is a side where he's like, I can do whatever I want and you can't stop me. And this, and that's,
Yeah.
luckily he was raised in Kansas, I guess. So.
I can only assume when World War II, I guess maybe we entered, or we were getting closer to the end or something. What did they, when he become
No,
truth,
dude.
justice, in the American way?
In the 50s.
In the 50s. Okay, so after. Okay.
Because you got to remember, that was during communism. That was like, he
Oh
was
yes,
trying to
yes,
say
yes.
the American way, all that stuff. So
That makes sense.
So yeah, like, this is like, he does that in the first issue. He hears, I don't even know, they didn't even say how he does. Oh no, that he's walking through like his reporter, area,
Yeah.
and someone has called into the cops, and a reporter's listening to I guess the police telephone line, that there's a wife beating happening, and like Superman goes and saves the wife from a beating, or from in the middle of getting beat, and then he like he starts beating the fuck out of the out of the
Oh,
husband.
oh yeah, like that's one thing. Superman in these early ones, whoever is like someone he has to stop from doing something, if it gets to altercation, like this Superman, don't
He
give
will beat the
a
fuck out of them. Like,
yes.
so much so that if they don't say he's still breathing in the last panel, you might say, oh, he murdered that guy.
He's probably dead. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when he throws the husband, into a wall, and like the guy lands on his head and neck, and he's, I'm assuming thrown with super force because
Yeah.
he picked up a human. Yeah, it's kind of interesting that, yeah, there's a lot of points in this where Superman goes out of his way to put people in danger, or doesn't really have a problem really hurting people badly. To the point of, if, like I said, if they didn't say, oh, luckily he didn't kill them or whatever, like they didn't say that, you might think he was dead. So, or they were dead. So one thing that's also interesting in this is the Lois Lane. What'd you think of Lois Lane in this?
Yeah, I like, she's in the first issue, so she's been there the whole time too.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool to see. And I mean, she definitely falls into that like damsel in distress, as far as like she definitely has to be saved all the time. But
I don't think so. Well, okay. There is like where she gets herself into situations, but it's because she is not a normal woman for the time, I don't think. I think they were trying to write a woman who is liberated and like, screw that, I can go out in these tough places too. And then when she gets involved in like, gang fights or whatever, then Superman comes and he's already there stopping this, and he saves her too. But like, I don't think if she was a man, I don't think, if she had like the gumption she has in this, I think Superman would still have to save that guy too. Like, you know what I mean?
sure,
Like,
okay.
like, I
I
don't
guess
feel like she's a damsel in distress in this.
yeah, I guess I should amend that. I don't mean a damsel. She definitely got into situations where she had to be saved every time. But yeah, she definitely, like, she put herself in those situations as like, oh well, I could go undercover to do this, or I can talk my way into this with these mobsters or whatever. And
Yeah. Yeah. And like, one thing I loved is her utter hate and contempt for for Clark Kent.
Oh yeah.
So we have to say this. So they don't really. I mean, I guess they drew him with like a little bit of a different stature, but Clark Kent is supposed to be obviously the mild mannered version of Superman. He is the disguise of Superman, and he's supposed to have like bad posture and look frumpy and be all like meek and shit. But like whenever they draw him, I don't know, he looks like he's standing up straight to me. Maybe it's because he's always in a suit because that's what everybody wore back then. But like they always say when he transforms into Superman, when he like pulls his clothes off and like has the suit underneath, it says like, and in mere minute or like in 1 minute, Superman removes his clothes and straightens his posture so that he looks straight up, just like Superman or whatever. And it's like, was he leaning over that bad? Like I don't, I don't know. Apparently, Clark Kent is a hunchback.
I was like, yeah, Clark Kent has a hump, and it straightens out when he's Superman.
Yeah, the first time that Superman has to really like save Lois, and that we see him like have to transform from like a social setting, is when Lois gets hit on by like a mobster who's named Butch Mason, which is a great mobster name, and she slaps him and walks out. And then, and what's even better is that she's on a date with Clark, and then the guy comes up and is like, "Let me cut in," and like tries to push Clark out of the way. And because Superman's trying to be like play the part, he doesn't do anything. And Lois is like, "How could you just do that? I hate you." Like she literally says, like, "You're a coward and a spineless, unbearable person." Like just goes off on him, and I just think that's hilarious. But so she does that. She stands up for herself, walks out because Clark won't do it, and then the Mason guy gets mad at that and tries to kidnap her, and it successfully does. But then Superman saves her. So that's what I'm saying. Like she does get into situations, but it's not like she's not like, "Help me, I can't do anything." Like she's giving them lip as they're driving with her. You know what I mean? Like she's saying like, "Fuck you, let me out of here." You know, like I would never go with you anyway. You know, Butch Mason. So, yeah, it's like interesting to see the way they portray her, which was supposed to be, I'm assuming at the time, a very liberated woman. So someone who like she's thinking for herself. She's a top reporter. One thing I thought was interesting about this, I don't know what you thought, but the idea that Clark Kent is a top reporter. I don't think I've ever in modern day seen him like really be like he's breaking stories, not like Lois is, right? Like it's like that is just he's Superman and he's like an average reporter is what is what I always thought he was. And then seeing this, it's like you're an ace reporter, Clark. Go get this story, and like that's why he ends up in these places a lot of the times.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of how we see it now. He's like just another guy in the pool of reporters at the in this start of the comic, the Daily Star.
Right. Yeah. I don't know when they changed it to the Daily Planet, but it's the Daily Star in this one.
But yeah, it definitely it seemed he seemed much more like yeah, well, Clark Kent will take the case because he's a great reporter.
Yeah. And yeah, so like I just thought that was interesting that in this he's like an ace reporter, which is interesting. And then so in this first issue, we have Superman saving someone from death row. We have Superman saving a woman from getting beat. We have Superman saving Lois from mobsters. We have Superman fighting corruption when he finds out that there's a senator who's corrupt, and he decides to take that senator and run him all around town from like leaping from building to building while holding on to this guy. Kind of like Batman would do, you know, like where Batman like throws people off a building, but they have a hook on their foot or whatever. So
I love
that catches them.
I thought he was gonna fly in that part, but then they said, you can't walk on those, and he walks across, I guess, like electrical wires between buildings.
Yeah, and he's like, "Don't you know, birds can land on these things? I won't get electrocuted." I'm like, "That's I don't think that's how it works, man." Like, yeah, I think he would totally have died, or at least the guy would have. I don't know. I don't know about Superman, but yeah. So it's just interesting. Like in the first issue, they're like, "This is what we're about." They had like pretty well rounded, like this is what Superman is about. And so I just thought that was very interesting. So then we see like in the next couple issues, there's like a lot of other things that get touched on. There's one where like he finds out like some guy is like a weapons manufacturer, and he's like, "Oh, you like war so much because you make money off of it. Well, I'll send you to war. And in the span of one panel or like 3 panels, Clark Kent makes this guy and himself like enlisted in the army or whatever, and then they're already like at the battle line, like so like they go through boot camp and basic and everything, like against his will. Also, this guy, this munitions manufacturer, somehow Clark is or Superman has gotten him through, and now they're like marching in fucking France or whatever, fighting the Russians or the Germans. So yeah, like I think it's just funny, and it's all to make a point to this guy. It's like, you're gonna go through war because you like it so much, you make so much money. Well, guess what? This is what war really is like. So very strong stance on war. Superman is very anti-war, but I just thought that was like a really interesting story because it's so weird. You never see anything like this nowadays necessarily, but just the way that it's done is hilarious. Like their thought process of like, well, how could he show this guy? It's like, well, why doesn't he make him go through basic and then make him be in a soldier in the war, and then that would make his change his mind on how good war is because he's seen the horrors of it. And so yeah, like this dude totally gets like bombarded and stuff and has to go through like actual war stuff. And with Superman there, I guess Superman's protecting him.
Yeah. But still, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And then you know what? I actually saw, okay, in this second issue with this storyline of the military and stuff, Lois shows up to try to talk to, like, get the scoop on the generals of each side and stuff, and get a story on that. And I thought this was very similar to the Batman versus Superman scene. Is it that one where Lois goes to like the warlord to try to get a story or something?
Yes.
I was like, oh, this is like that. Like I know they didn't take it from this, but like I doubt they went all the way back to here to be like, what is Superman really like? Because the rest of it doesn't really have any of that. But like I just thought it was funny, like, oh, it's kind of similar where she's like going to talk to warlords, then she gets captured and Superman has to save her from like a firing squad. So I just thought that was like an interesting thing that happened in this because it was like very close to the movie, where like she gets captured.
Yeah. And one of the guys that's there, this is one of the fights that threw me, is he picks up this guy and he just throws him like,
oh yeah,
I don't know, like
it says he tosses him away as though he were a hurling javelin.
Yeah. I guess he throws him at least an eighth of a mile or something.
Yeah, he throws this dude, and the guy isn't wearing armor or anything, so that dude is dead. That dude is
that guy
totally
is dead.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so like we see him like battling planes and stuff. So you're getting more and more his power set, and like I said, they started showing him have more and more powers through this too as we go on. Later on, we see him get super hearing, where he like hears people from far away that like that's never been a thing yet. And then also and this is not a thing in the comics anymore, but he used to have like super hypnotism where he could like look at you and hypnotize you. That happens a couple times in these old issues. So I just thought that was fun, that like they're just like whatever the story calls for, that's what his new power is.
He's got that power too.
Yeah. So, and then possibly my favorite story of this, second favorite. I got the football one is actually my favorite because it was like, what the fuck is going on? But there's one about mines and like the condition of mine workers, and this is the one with the racism, I guess you'd call it, because the people who work in the mines are Eastern European, so they all have like they talk in broken English and stuff, and Clark has to pretend to be one of them. Or I guess Superman has to pretend to be one of them. Because so what happens at the beginning is like the conditions are so bad in these mines that the workers like don't have any safety equipment at all. And so something happens where a bunch of workers are trapped in a mine, and Clark has to put on, or Superman has to put on like fake, I guess he dresses up like a miner. I don't even know how he gets the gear for it, but he does. And he puts on like his little mining helmet, and he goes down there and he saves all these people, and he finds out, oh, the mine had like no safety equipment at all, or if it did, it was like broke or expired and didn't work. And so Superman saves all these people. Then he goes to talk, as the reporter, he goes to talk to the owner of the mine, and he's like, so I'm here with the Daily Star. Now that you know what caused the issue, like, you're gonna fix that, right? And the guy's like, no, like, everybody's fine. Superman saved them. No one died. It's all good. And that, of course, doesn't work for Superman. So Superman decides to visit the guy at night, but he's dressed as the miner. And I don't know how he knew this was all going down, but the owner of the mine is having a party, I guess, to be like, hey, the mine's doing great. And he has all his friends over. And I thought this was hilarious. It's like, how do we write the story where they end up in the mine? Clark Kent is dressed up like a miner, and he sneaks into this dude's house. And they catch him, of course. I don't know what the plan was, really, because this is just kind of happenstance that the guy at first is like, just take him outside and beat him. but then he says, wait, I have an idea. I have these people gathered here. Why don't we all go down to the mines as like a fun game? And he can lead us because he works down there. And everybody that's in their nice suits and these evening gowns decides, yes,
that's a great idea.
Great idea to go down into a mine in the middle of the night with one light, with a headlamp, right? and like in our gowns and stuff. Well, there's no way we would get dirty or anything. I don't know. So they're like, yeah, this is great. Like everybody's stoked about this. I don't know. Maybe they're just like, we're so rich we don't understand what poor people do for a living or whatever. So
I've never been in a mine before. Oh,
well, a lot of people haven't been in a mine, but you could probably guess what it's like in a mine. It's not very fun or very nice. So they follow Superman down to the mine. And he's incognito. And one thing that's great, this is what I was saying, where Superman will just put people in jeopardy, like people's lives in jeopardy. I guess he's really confident in his own skills and planning, because once these people are down there, they're like, ugh, this place is terrible. Why did we go here? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, yeah, duh, it's a mine.
It's a mine.
They're walking around, and Superman like goes off into his own little corner, and he collapses the mine so they can't get out. But I guess he's like, haha, we'll be, I'll make sure they're safe, but now they know what it's like to be trapped in the mine. So he traps them in the mine, and then the mine owner's like, don't worry. I'm sure these like mine safety equipment that I paid for will save us. And he goes to the wall and he tries to like call people up to the top, which I don't know who would be there in the middle of the night, but maybe there's always someone there at the top in case. And he tries to call, but it's not working. There's no electric signal. So this thing is just, on the wall. It's a dummy telephone, basically. And they're all stuck there. And Superman makes them all dig for their lives. He's like, he's like, the only thing we can do is dig. If you want to dig, or if you want to live, you have to dig. I'm not digging because I do this for my day job. This is, I don't care if I die or live. I'm a miner, but but you guys, you want to live, you got to dig. So he takes a pitchfork and gives a bunch of pickaxes to people. Sorry, not pickaxes to people. And they then work all night while the tunnel is like flooding and filling up with water, and they're like in waist high water and shit. And everybody's, of course, freaking out. Eventually, like a signal does somehow get to the top. I don't know how, but like people find out, oh, there's a cave in and people are stuck in there. And so on the other side of this collapse, the regular miners are working. And then Superman waits for all the guests and the owner to tire themselves out so much that they, because they're so frantic about dying in a mine, they pass out, everybody's asleep, and then he's like, finally, I've been waiting for them to pass out. Now I can very quietly remove all this rubble so that they don't wake up, because they're literally sleeping feet from this rubble that needs to get cleared. And Superman just picks it up very, very gingerly so that he does not wake them up and spoil the surprise that he's Superman. And then at the end of it, just like the munitions maker, the owner of the mine decides once they get out that I'm gonna make this the safest mine in the country and all this stuff. So he learned his lesson. What'd you think of that one, John?
Yeah. I was like, okay, so Superman will endanger the lives of dozens of people just to prove a point of like, this guy owns a mine and he doesn't care about his workers. And I mean, this sounds like a story they would do nowadays, 100%.
Oh yeah.
So I was really surprised by that one. I was like, okay, wow, that didn't sound like Superman to me.
Yeah, it was crazy. I just thought it was really, really funny. Now the next one is possibly my favorite because it makes like zero sense at all.
Oh yeah.
So apparently football was a thing. because, and I don't know why Superman decides to do this. Superman hears some people talking on a train that like he's at the beginning of each of these issues. They got to like redo his powers, so that everybody who's picking this up for the first time understands what Superman is. So they show him like running around town, bounding across buildings, saving people, and they run in. There's a scene where he's running next to a train, and then there's like a car trapped on the tracks, and he saves that. So he ends up by this train, and on the train he hears that there's like some people betting on a sports thing or something, and it's like it's actually like this kid. People are gonna like bet on the sports team, but also this kid is like being, I don't know, he could be a good player, but he's not living up to his potential, and the coach is gonna like, he's already benched, but he's gonna get rid of him at the end of this or something. So Superman decides, and I guess this is part of social justice, I don't know, in the 30s or whatever, but he decides he's going to take on this young man's identity. I'm not exactly sure how he does that. It says he uses makeup and grease paint to look like another person.
Like you do, I don't know. Like, I don't know if you've done this, but
all the time.
All the time. When I was in theater, all you got to do is put on a little bit of makeup and grease paint, and people are like, oh, you're so-and-so now. I 100% get it. Where did John go? I don't know, but now we have George Washington here from the dead. How about that?
Yes.
So of course it's I don't remember the guy's name, but he's
Tommy Burke. His name is Tommy Burke.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So Tommy Burke goes, out one night to his date, and his girlfriend, who is like, I am so ashamed to be your girlfriend. I thought you were going to be a football star, but you are not. You were a bench warmer, and what the hell? You've never even gotten into one game. So this guy's basically like Rudy or something. And so as he's walking away angrily, because she basically says, like, I want a real man, I will date Wallace Dodd, the tennis champion, because he's a real athlete. This guy, Tommy Burke, is walking away, and then someone's like, hey, pal, look over here. And Tommy's like, what? And then all of a sudden, Superman is standing there, but it's not Superman, it's himself. He's looking at a mirror version of himself because Superman has such a good job looking like him. So he gets confused. And then Superman uses, okay, it says he like he uses a hypodermic needle, but I could have sworn that in this one he also uses like a hypnotism. Maybe that's later in another issue. I thought maybe this was the one where he uses hypnotism for the first time.
Yeah.
But either way, he like drugs a guy and takes him out of his own life. And then he proceeds to take over the guy's life and start playing football for this team. And the first day that he's there, some other like team member is like, hey, Burke, you suck. And Superman dressed as Burke throws the dude across the locker room and knocks him out cold. And so the coach is like, you're not on the team anymore. Like, I'm kicking you off. And Superman is nuts to that. So he says, he just runs onto the field and starts making plays, like catching the ball, running across the field. He literally does like 100-yard run, I guess, from like kickoff or whatever. So he's jumping over his own teammates. He's got like 40 guys, trying to tackle him, and they're like hanging on him, and it's not slowing down, of course. So the coach is like, oh my God, what happened to you, Burke? Like, you used to suck, and now you're the bee's knees or whatever. And so he does this, and I don't know, like literally Superman has Burke tied up in a house, like just hanging out while Superman's there. Now, one of my favorite scenes of all time is another guy goes over to Burke's house, and it's like, I think it's the guys that were going to bet on him or something. And so they're trying to take him out of the game because they hear that he's going to do good now. So they're like, oh shit, we don't want to bet on the other team if he's going to be good. So they go over to Burke's house where Superman has him tied up, and they find him tied up, and they're like, huh, well, this is useful. Like, I didn't even need to do anything. And then Superman is in the room just hanging. It says the two thugs are unaware Burke is under the influence of a sleep-inducing drug, or that Superman is observing them from the molding overhead, like a fly on the wall, except it's a giant super person.
Is that there's a man of, I know, I just imagined like sitting in your living room, and then you
Yeah,
you look up over in the corner, and you just see like your best friend
a
just
giant.
up in the corner.
Yeah, it's like, what do you mean you don't notice him? He's there in the room, just on the wall. Like, I don't understand. But yeah, so they kidnap Burke because Superman had him tied up, and he's doing so good, and throwing off the betting line and stuff. And so yeah, this is just like literally Superman kicking ass so hard that like everybody's like, oh my god, Burke is like a madman. No one can stop him. I can't believe it. What's gotten into him? And then at the end of it, he's like pretends, or no, he just switches back. Like Burke gets out of it. I can't remember if like Superman frees him or some shit, but like basically Burke gets out of his tied up bonds or whatever, and he ends up back on the field with Superman, and then Superman switches with him and is like, oh, now that you're back, I will just switch with you, and now everybody likes you. And his girlfriend is like, oh my god, I didn't know you could play this good, and like leaves it at that. I'm like, what?
So he just felt really bad for this kid. So he made himself up like you do with makeup. He imprisoned him, impersonated him in his life to make him be somebody that he cannot and will not ever be.
Ever be. Yeah.
And then at the end, it's like he's like, okay, tag out. You can go ahead and get back in there.
Yeah. So the only difference, the only thing that I guess at the end like makes up for it is that at the end of it, his girlfriend says, oh my god, Tommy, you were wonderful, splendid. You must promise you'll give up football. It's too brutal. And so the guy's like, oh, I mean, yeah, because I can't do any of the shit that guy just did pretending to be me. So I guess no harm, no foul.
Yeah, he still gets the girl and doesn't have to play football because there's no way he could live up to those standards.
Yes, exactly. So, and then my favorite part of this as well, at the very end of this, you have a how-to about acquiring super strength. And it's got a little kid, and it's like showing him pick up different kinds of furniture. And it has a warning. It says, warning, when exercising, it is always well to remember that overstrain is dangerous. Be moderate in your exertions. And then the first little pictogram is a child trying to pick up a lazy boy armchair. And it says, if you find lifting a heavy armchair a difficult task, or you may find picking up an armchair a difficult task. However, if you start with smaller weights regularly, and it shows him picking up like a file cabinet and a chair, and then finally he'll be able to lift an armchair at the end. I don't know if you should encourage children picking up fucking furniture around the house. I'm just.
Oh yeah, while mom and dad are in the other room, we're out. You go around and you just start seeing what you can pick up in the household. What can you lift?
Yeah, exactly. I find those things so funny because it's just like it's just a lawsuit waiting to happen, I guess. So, yeah. So, oh, you know what? You were right. There is an adventure comic with a gorilla in it. That's the one you were talking about. But there is also one with a native tribes person as well.
Okay, that must have been a little further down.
Yeah, it's a little further down. Yeah, maybe it's like issue 9 or something. I don't know. That was kind of like the highlights for me. Was there any that you thought were like amazing that we needed to touch on?
Not specifically. I did think the sixth one was kind of funny because it's weird that Superman, like people are starting to know Superman, so they're like, we're gonna put Superman's name on everything and we're gonna trademark it, and they're like,
no, it wasn't even that. He was pretending that he was Superman's manager, and he was like taking out billboards and selling like toys and merchandise, having merchandise made of Superman, saying like, oh, I'm his manager, and yeah, like I represent him. And he's telling this to Clark Kent, who doesn't know who Superman is, yeah, or who is Superman, I guess. So like, I just think that's funny. You're right. That's a good one. That's kind of a weird one though, because it's just kind of like him picking on this guy who's like using his name illegally, I guess, or against his will. Oh, that one also has a really good like how to build up your hand strength muscles, like it's like clench your fists and then move them back and forth really fast in jerking motions, and eventually you will have the strength to crush other people's hands.
Yeah, because that's what you want. You want to be able to. What? That's the handshake that your dad likes to give. Like, hey, sport, and then grabs your hand, just squeezes all your fingers so hard.
Well, that's how you know you're a real man, John. Because when you get that hard squeeze and you squeeze back and you both stare each other in the eye and you nod a little bit to each other, it's kind of like in Predator.
Yeah,
Carl Weathers and Arnold are like, you son of a bitch.
You son of a bitch. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that you're wearing, short sleeves so you can see all those muscles when you
Yes.
grab arms.
Exactly. So any other ones stand out? There was one about a circus that I thought was funny.
The circus one was funny too. I was gonna say I like that he's in there and like they're like, oh no, the lion escaped. And he's like, you want to play, kitty? And picks up the lion.
Yeah. There's a lot of there's weird stuff in that one. It's weird that like he takes up the plight of random people and random causes. It's just ridiculous,
Yeah,
it's funny that like this would be there.
The everyman really is like really random, and whoever
literally it could be any man, like anyone who's just walking around going, man, how am I going to pay bills this week? All of a sudden Superman will come down, stick you with a hypodermic needle, take over your life, make you $1 million, and then give your life back to you. Like that's that's what would happen essentially.
That is like basically what. Yeah, it's very very odd the way that he goes about it. And again, like he uses his powers in different ways, like to play football or to to be the strong man in the circus there, and it's just interesting.
Yes. Oh, there was one where like he like actually helps neighborhood toughs like commit a crime to show them like you shouldn't commit crimes. I don't know, that one was really weird. Where like he actually like takes the kids on like let's, if you think it's kind of like, if you think smoking's so cool, then you should smoke a whole pack. It's like him going like, if you think crime's so cool, then let's go commit a real crime. And like and then he like has them set up a real crime and then ends up stopping them before they like commit it fully. Yeah, it's just a really weird stuff that would happen. But really fun and like interesting to read. I was never bored with this. What about you, John? Were you ever bored while reading these?
No, because everyone was so weird and unique. Like that's definitely one thing. Again, so I'm not like catching like ridiculously, overtly racist things every page and being like flabbergasted by that in the oldness of it. It's more like the art is fine and serviceable for the time. It's fun, and it's Superman in like this, not what you think of Superman pretty much like 90% of what's going on here. Like it's just like, what is he doing? What's going on? And so it was way different than I anticipated.
Yeah, but like in a great way. Like I don't know, it's very interesting to see like the roots of this character and what he's become. So like the last one I read, which you didn't read because you didn't read it to 10, but the last one I read was possibly the most what would you call it, subversive story, like against the government. He like it's supposed to be in the guise of like we're against tenement buildings, like because they're bad, like slumlord housing kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Superman reads in the paper that a hurricane hit Florida, and because the houses got destroyed by a natural disaster, the government sent funds and people to rebuild the areas, and they built them up nicer. So Superman decides, he sends a message to all these people in tenement area of town, like I guess like the ghetto area or whatever, and says like, leave tonight and get all your shit out that you want. And they do, I guess. They don't really, they don't show them leaving, but they're like, oh my God, we should get out of here. And then Superman destroys all the buildings in this area, just tears through the whole neighborhood. And like, I think it's like, like if you destroyed Brooklyn or something like a large borough or small city kind of thing. And then he's like, in the process of this, the police are like, what the hell, this guy's destroying all these buildings, and they try to stop him and they can't. So they call the National Guard, and he's like, you could shoot if you want, but you won't be able to kill me. And like he just keeps going, and then eventually the government sends like bomber planes and they begin to bomb him, but he's like, haha, don't you get it, you're helping me out, you're destroying these buildings that I'm trying to destroy. So literally the government like bombs these people's houses because Superman was destroying them. And then at the end, they're like, and then the government helped and sent and like rebuilt these even better. And now everybody's got nice housing in this area. And this is like, what? So what? Like, it was such a weird like premise. Like Superman learned about government programs of assistance and decided, you know what, instead of these people living here. And also I just imagine there's someone who's like, man, fuck that. I don't know if you've ever been in a building where there's like a fire alarm going off and people are like, fuck that, I'm not leaving my office. I can't imagine if some kid was like, hey, Superman said you should leave tonight, take all the stuff you care about, and you're like, fuck that. And then Superman just starts breaking down your building, it collapses on you. I don't know. That seemed like that would probably happen to a lot of people.
Yeah. So what you're telling me is Superman uh, committed another crime here. Was that he I guess like technically insurance fraud?
All of those things. I mean, it's not insurance. It's not insurance, but
no,
like,
I guess it's,
if you blow up your own building to get the government to build it back nicer, I don't know
what that's called.
what that would be, but yeah, like if you knew a hurricane was coming, you lived in Florida, and you're like, man, this house is real shitty, and you just blew it up. Who's to say it wasn't the hurricane?
It was totally the hurricane.
Yeah, but I mean, literally, the demolition and rebuilding happens within weeks. It says, so it's like, so these people were still out of a house and home for at least weeks.
No, I'm sure the government set them up in hotels. What are you talking about?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, of course.
And you know how fast the government works and is efficient to get nice new houses up in such a short amount of time.
Of course. And so everything worked out. And I was just like, wow, that's like, so like not only is Superman, like that's one of the things where I'm saying, like, he's not for the government, which is what I was expecting. Because whenever he's like, if you look at like Frank Miller's hit piece on Superman, which is like The Dark Knight, he's like, he's working for Ronnie Reagan. He's working for the American government. In this, he is not for the government. It is like, I'm going to do what I want, and I might use the government to my own means or whatever, or like, but I'm going to do whatever I want. And if the police get in my way, fuck them. If soldiers get in my way, fuck them. So I just think that's really funny and interesting, because that's kind of not what I was thinking it was going to be for being from the 30s, So
for sure, like you said, like him, like moving to the way of his own moral compass and just being like, well, I think I'm gonna go ahead and just do this because this feels right to me. So it feels the most like logical conclusion. It was very interesting to see that he just kind of does what he wants, and didn't really care too much if some people maybe get hurt in the process or whatnot. His goal
as long as they're the bad guys. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. Just a lot of wacky stories that you would the golden age is like this, but like I said, this was actually more readable than the like Stanley Silver Age stuff to me. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like
100%. One of the things I was gonna say, which I was initially thinking I was not going to be looking forward to, was how wordy it was. It was not a wordy comic at all. Like,
no,
everything was pretty straight to the point. I did like some of you could definitely tell the time period with some of the like.
I love the old lingo, the old timey speech. Yeah.
And I really liked specifically, like, Lois is obviously gaga over Superman, and every time they end the comic and he saves her, and she's like, "Will I see you again?" And Superman's very much like, "Maybe you will, maybe you won't. That's all for now."
Yeah.
Like he very much was like, yeah, whatever. Like he played it very like aloof as Superman to that, and
which is funny because as Clark Kent, he wants her really bad. Like every episode or every issue, he asks her out on a date, and she either says yes or no depending on her mood that day. But then through the date, or through even before the date, usually he'll do something that makes her go like, "Oh, that's why I hate you. Never mind, we're not going on a date." And then Superman comes later, and she's like, "Oh, Superman," and then he doesn't make a move as Superman.
Yeah.
So it's like, come on, man.
One of the lines in particular, she said one time, she's like, "Oh, that was so, thank you so much. Will I ever see you again?" And Superman says, "Who knows? Perhaps tomorrow, perhaps never."
Yes. Perhaps never.
Perhaps never.
You never know.
See ya.
So yeah, this is that was Action Comics. I mean, this pretty much, I'm assuming, I didn't read all this. Eventually, Superman does get his own title because he was so popular in Action Comics. So I think that's at the end of 1939. So it took about a year and a half for him to get his own actual title.
That's pretty good, though.
And that's actually in this trade too, but we didn't get there because it's like issue 15 or something of Action Comics after that. So yeah, it's really interesting to see the progression of like Action Comics where the covers don't have Superman on it most of the time until about issue 8 or 9. Then all of a sudden, every cover of Action Comics has Superman on the front. And then eventually he just gets his own title. And then Action Comics, like I said, just becomes a Superman title as well. So there's two monthly Superman books every month. There's always Superman and Action Comics. So yeah, it's very interesting. Just like you have Batman and Detective Comics. You have both of those at the same time too. So yeah. So John, what did you think about it? What would you give it?
I liked it. It was nice. Like I said, it was nice like going back and seeing this this part of history and this era. Because I think honestly, sitting down and reading, like, I've maybe like, seen some comic strips from this era that I've read maybe, or, seen them as part of, like a history on such and such character on it, but I've never really like sat and read through initial comics like this. And so it was really cool to see. And like I said, it really, I don't want to say blew my expectations, but it definitely like, I went into it being like, oh, this is going to be like wordy and very much like, like I am Superman, truth, justice kind of, and it
Yeah.
was not, and it wasn't that at all, pretty much. It was,
At all. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like the basic costume was about the only thing roughly that in general has been the same. He's got an S on his chest, a red cape, blue stuff, and wearing red undies, the red undie tights.
Red brief.
Red briefs. And so yeah, why do you know why that was a thing back in the day? Why like to have the different colored briefs over top of like whatever spandexy suit you're wearing? Is it just to break up the color?
I don't know. Yeah, it was just for design. I mean, to eye catch,
Okay, I didn't know if you knew if there was a specific reason.
I mean, because like the Phantom was out before this, and he had purple with black.
Yeah, I remember he has got like stripy ones, and he's got his cool belt that's got the little skull on it.
Yeah.
So interesting. Well, either way, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. Mm-hmm. And surprisingly so, like for different reasons. So I'm gonna give this a solid 7. Like I enjoyed reading it, and like I said, it was cool that every issue was just kind of its own thing. Like it didn't necessarily have to, if like there was one I was like, yeah, that was a weird story, whatever, just move on, and it didn't matter really.
Right.
So yeah,
it wasn't ever like terrible to read though. Like you might be like, it's not my thing, but you could get through it, and it wasn't like horrible.
Exactly.
Yeah, which some of those, like, I mean, I've tried to read like Fantastic Four from the 60s by like Stan Lee, and that's, to me, is like unreadable almost. So but yeah, so I'm gonna give this because I love the history aspect of it, like the whole, like this is them developing the language of superheroes. This is them developing what a superhero is and what kind of powers Superman has, all that stuff. And like what would a superhero do, kind of thing. They're trying things out, and not all the stories hit, not all of them make sense. So I really like that, to see it like in its infancy. So I'm gonna give this one an 8, just because I think it's really fun to read in like the historical context. And now I want to go through. I want to actually like buy all these old like these paperbacks of these Golden Age Supermans and Batmans and stuff too. I want to check those out. So yeah, it should be fun. Yeah, so I'm gonna give that. You give a 7. John, do you know what we'll read next week?
No, next week is going to be based on our poll. So
That's
if you
right.
want to vote on what we're going to be reading next one, make sure you join our Patreon. All patrons always get to vote on our second podcast of the month. We give them a theme or maybe like a list of characters, and they get to vote on it. And this one, being that it's the new year, we're going with new characters we have not done specifically like their own solo run on the podcast. We've never done them before. So definitely, if you want to vote on that, make sure to check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Planes Training Comic Books, all one word. We got a couple different tiers to sign up for it. Some have additional extra readings, like if you like Matt's so I was what Matt's mini says, the Swamp Thing run, then he's doing a Constantine one as well that you can sign up for that kind of coincides with it. And Wayne, what number are you on now?
On Constantine, I'm at 51.
Okay.
And on Swamp Thing, I'm at 116.
I'm just wanted to say I couldn't remember a number yet because the value alone on the backlog of not only our whole backlog, but then the backlog of that, of all the issues that you have is it's just fantastic. All the work that Matt puts into that is astonishing, and I am so appreciative of him. Of course,
I appreciate it. So, who are the characters? You know the characters that we're doing?
I think I wrote them down. I know I have the. It should be going.
So I know we're gonna do Jonah Hex. We're gonna do the Mask, like the Jim Carrey movie one. But I don't remember the other two.
Deadpool, on his own, and then a Witchblade.
Nice. So get some of those indie books in there.
Throwing a little TNA on that one.
Hey, who doesn't love that? So anyway, so yeah, if you'd like to vote on those and pick which one you want to listen to, then you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word. And with that, I think we'll see you guys on the next one.
Oh, we should actually thank our patrons. That's definitely part of being a patron. So
I always forget, and I apologize. So.
Otaku Mike, Hoku, and Christian, thank you so much. We appreciate you guys. And yeah, thanks for supporting us. And thank you to all of our listeners, too. Even if you're not able to support us monetarily, you just, keep us going. Let us know what you're enjoying. Your the comments we see more and more. So we appreciate it. We take all of that into consideration, too. So thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And with that, we'll see you guys on the next one.
On the next one.
Bye.